Hi, Peter Charles here of Hooked for Life Fly Fishing, and this is going to be my last video on active nymphing. I'm just going to wrap it up and talk about what I've learned by trying it. Now, if you're just starting with this video, go back and watch all the other ones. But basically, it's about mayflies that are on the bottom. The body's filled with gas. They no longer cling to the rocks. They go up, but they don't want to be up. They swim back down, and then they float back up, swim back down. And that up and down motion is when fish pick them up. So the idea with active nymphing is to imitate that to a reasonable degree. The other thing, don't forget, there's also swimming nymphs out there, and this active nymphing also imitates them as well. So, will it work? Well, it did. I caught fish every time I went out. Overall, I caught 5 different species of fish doing it. Upwards, I think the biggest fish I hooked was something around 15 inches. So I was getting something of decent size as well. I've got a few in that 12, 14 range as well. I'd have to say it's pretty effective for attracting fish, getting them to move. One of the things I noticed about it was I often would hook up just as I started to move the fly. And they hit it pretty quickly when it started to move. To me, that suggested they were tracking the fly or following it, taking a look at it, and then when it moved, they grabbed it. I had some pretty hard takes. There's one that even caused some line spray when it took so hard. And I also had some that I could barely feel. Strike detection proved not to be a problem. Most of the time, I could detect the strike just by feeling it. Sometimes I could see the indicator move, but most of the time it was, I'm feeling the strikes themselves. So what can we say? First off, as I say, number one, it works. There's no question. Number two, it seems to be not relatively sensitive to the type of fly. I thought I'd have to invent a fly specifically for it. No. Any well-weighted nymph is going to do the job for you. 3, long rods. There's no question long rods are good, and shorter rods make it more challenging. My IMX Pro 10-foot 2-weight proved to be absolutely ideal for the job. The leaders are not terribly difficult to put together. You just need basically an old dry fly leader, and keep the taper part of it, remove what's left of the tippet, and build your leader from there. So leaders are not critical. You just need a very small inline float to keep them going. You're finding that the best method I found for actually presenting the fly was that backwards mend of the float. Just keep moving it backwards and let it flow forwards and move it back, and you're working the run more effectively. I also found that it wasn't hard to manage depth. I mean, I would have very long tippet sections coming off the float, upwards of 6 feet or more, and I was working shallow runs, and I could, just by managing the speed and the frequency of doing these mends, I could keep it off bottom, or if I got into a deeper run, I would just slow things down and the fly would get to the bottom. I was ticking bottom often enough in a variety of situations to see that I could really control the depth without having to re-rig everything, because you don't want to continually try, shorten and lengthen the leaders all of the time to handle the different situations. So it was nice to be able to go from a shallow run to a deeper run and still tick bottom, still fish effectively, still catch fish on the same rig. So that was nice. The other thing I found was there was a difference in how fast the flies got down depending on whether I used a loop knot or a knot that was tight to the hook. So that again, if you need to get down more quickly, you want to use a loop knot. If you're fishing shallower runs, the tight to the hook type knot works just fine, like a clinch knot, for example. That'll work just fine. So all in all, it was a lot of fun, and that's the big thing. I'm not one to really want to watch indicators. It puts me to sleep. So having a more active method of nymphing made it more enjoyable, and some of the takes were just hammering those flies. That makes it an awful lot of fun when you get a take like that. And I found I was picking fish out of some interesting runs. But I thought, I wonder if there's a fish in here. It looks kind of shallow, blah, blah, blah. And bang, I was getting fish out of them. So it proved that it could catch the attention of fish from the movement. So a dead drifted nymph might not get that fish simply because the fish is keyed in on movement and the dead drifted nymph isn't moving. So that's kind of the conclusion of this is it's fun, it works, and it didn't take a lot of specialized gear or specialized flies or anything. I would say just build the leader the way I described, and the thing about that is you can flip it off for a dry fly leader if you wanted to go dry fly fishing afterwards. It's pretty easy to put together. And as I say, give it a try. And if you just got a 9-foot rod, use the 9-foot rod. It doesn't matter. It just the longer rod makes it easier, but you could manage with a 9-foot. I did it with an 8.5. I won't be afraid of doing it with a 7-foot rod, except it just would be, a little bit more of a fiddle. But other than that, it'll work. You could still do it. So if all you own is a 7-foot rod, try it. And the other thing I forgot to mention in the other videos is I actually got strikes on the float as it was going up and down. And that looks a lot like mayflies when they're egg laying. So one of the things you might want to consider is putting on a very bushy, high floating dry fly instead of a float. And, just use the dry fly as your indicator, and you'll often, you could very well catch a fish on the dry. If it's bouncing up and down off the water as you're making your mends, it looks like an egg-laying mayfly. So that's something to think about. Humpy would be a good choice, I would think. Any big, bulky, bushy mayfly that floats very well, that'll work. And if you're in bass water, because I'm going to use this for bass as well, you put a popper for your float and put a woolly bugger for your point fly. Should work just great. The only reason why I didn't do it in these videos is because I'm limited by regulations to one fly. So in water where that's not a problem, think about putting a dry fly or a popper for your float and catch fish on that as well. So active nymphing, it works. Give it a try. Cheers.